to Germany or go to India and get a visa, I can't help you. You'd have to get an Indian attorney or a Mexican attorney. So I don't practice U.S. law, that's my jurisdiction. So people coming here, I can help, not going out other places. That's number one. Number two, the policy of our country, like most countries, and it's not political, is America first. Okay? And again, it's not political. Most countries, every country should be their country first. And the idea is we want to bring immigrants to this country if it benefits this country. We don't want to do that if it harms the country. That's the policy. It's always been the policy from the very beginning. So with that in mind, we have the United States immigration law, which is in the Constitution, about 2 lines. All right, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, but very interesting. Since then, we've got a whole area of law, okay? And we'll briefly touch it today. 2 major areas in immigration law. 1 is immigrant visas, 2 is non-immigrant visas. So get your head around that. So 1 area is where people are coming here to stay permanently. So it's your mind, your frame of mind. What's your intent? If you're looking to come to this country permanently, then you're an immigrant. You're looking for an immigrant visa, which is primarily green card, which is slang for legal permanent resident. And then the other column is non-immigrant. So the intent there is temporary. You're only coming for a time and then you're leaving. So 2 big areas. So we're going to start today with immigrant visa. So that's here, your mind, and it's very important because if you go and try to get a visa, they're going to ask you how long you're going to stay here. They want to know your intent. And if you say, if in your mind you're saying, well, I want to spend the rest of my life in the U.S. I don't want to live in this country anymore. But you're getting a non-immigrant visa, like a B2 visitor visa, right? That's not going to work. I'm not going to allow that. So they're saying, you want to come here on a B2 visitor visa, which means that you can stay here for 6 months at a time, leave, you can come back, but it's temporary. But in your mind, your intent is to be here for the rest of your life. You're not getting that visa. So very important. Okay, so those 2 major areas, immigrant, non-immigrant. Let's start with, that's the most popular, that's the easiest, okay? Probably seen movies, probably heard about this in the news, where somebody marries a U.S. citizen, not because they love them, but because they want to get a green card. Happens all the time. It's immigration fraud. Deal with that all the time. When I have clients come to my office, a husband and wife, immediate spouse scenario, I'm telling them right off the bat, that the government, which is in this case is the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and underneath that is the USCIS, United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. The first thing they're going to look at is this a fraudulent marriage? I'm not making a judgment. I'm looking at you guys. You look fine. You got husband, wife. You're good. But the government's going to look at you and say, let's make sure it's real. Okay? So my job as an attorney is to prove that this marriage here is real. Because there's so much marriage fraud. So many people come in here, and by the way, there's a whole cottage industry where you pay somebody, you get married, they live in Texas, you live somewhere else, you get the green card. It's my job to help those that are bona fide, and I tell them, I say, look, why'd you get married? Oh, because we love each other, we want to spend the rest of our lives together. Well, bingo, that's the correct answer, okay? Please don't tell me just to get a green card. Please don't tell me that, because it's not going to work out. Okay, so, all right, so that's through family, through employment. So, we got businesses here. I don't know if you've ever hired an immigrant. There's several ways of doing it. Here is, now again, this is where it gets tricky, because a lot of our employment, not green cards, but visas through H-2A, all those visas, and those are temporary. So, and some of you guys may be familiar with it, or your J1s, just temporary. You want them here for a season, so if you got a farm, you want agricultural workers, that is non-immigrant. So what we have for immigrant, your mind is permanently staying in this country, coming to this country. You can get that through employment too. How? Well, you have different levels. So you got the H-1B, that's non-immigrant, but then you move up. Your employer can sponsor employers can sponsor an immigrant worker for EB1, EB2, EB3. We'll talk a little bit about that. I'm already running out of time, but so those are a pathway to a green card through your employer. So there is a different way. So in other words, this is how it generally happens in the business world. And we'll go back to the United States policy on immigration law. Is we want to benefit this country. It's America first. Again, not political. America first. Why? We want our country to be humming. We want the businesses to be doing good. If they're running out of employees, listen, we're going to want to be able to bring in foreign employees to keep them up and running. Right? That's why we have business immigration. Right now, listen, there is a need for foreign workers. Why? Either in the fields where most Americans won't do that type of work. We need them. But not just there, but high tech, Indians coming over. Why? We're not producing this country. And we need, so there's a real need. There's a whole process. So now, of course, you got the U.S. Homeland Security, USCIS, then you got the Department of Labor, okay? A completely whole different branch of the government, okay? But as immigration attorneys, I have to deal with the Department of Labor because I have to go and get a certification to make sure that when we hire this immigrant, that we're doing it right. And here it is, that we're not harming this country. Because if we bring in immigrant workers for real cheap, right? That's not helping us. Why? Because now we're harming the American worker. Now they're upset, saying, look, you're bringing these immigrants, right? And we have a big issue that's political and everything else. So the government makes us, as attorneys, make sure we get a certification from the Department of Labor, make sure that we do prevailing wage, we do job description, we do advertising. The company, you, would have to advertise for American workers before you can hire the immigrant. So there has to be a need. It can't be, well, I want my uncle from Italy here. This is give him an EB2. No, there has to be a legitimate need, okay? All right, next, green card as special immigrant. That gets into diversity, visas and stuff. Don't have time. Green card for a refugee. Asylum, that's asylum. Okay, now we're back. Go ahead.
I got a question here.
Yeah.
So when you talk about full employment, if you bring somebody over here from India for a special position,
Yeah.
if that position goes away because of the economy or something they have no control of, then what happens to them?
Well, if they get their green card, they stay. Then they're completely divorced from the from that business because now they got a green card and they go work somewhere else.
Okay.
Now, before they get the green card, that's a good question. You'll see this with the non-immigrant. That's a couple slides down. It's okay. The H-1B is when they come for 3 years at a time. They can renew for another 3 years. Okay. If a company really likes them, then they may do the EB2, 3 to keep them here and get a green card. If they don't like them, then it's like, okay, you go back to India. But what happens is, if that company gets fired or whatever happens, they go to another company. So that's what happens. Yeah, cool. Good question. Okay, green card for reference. So this is asylum. Okay. So now we're back at the border. Okay. So this is where we the road hits the rubber or whatever. Okay. This is where these guys coming over and saying, why are we just letting all these people in? You know, blah blah blah. Well, this country has always had a policy to take care of those that are in trouble, basically. You know, it's a compassionate country that we have. That's a good thing. We're a country of immigrants, right? And so if there's a legitimate need, if there's a person's legitimately being persecuted, this country says, come on, we'll take it. Okay, we'll talk about that later. But again, lots and lots of fraud. Most of that stuff coming over from Canada, wherever, is not legitimate. And they usually don't get a turn, they just try to do it. But there are legitimate, I got 4 or 5 clients right now, asylum. Okay, green card for human trafficking and crime. So if somebody comes over here and there's a crime, they help the police or some other authority with capturing the person or just giving them the information, our government will reward them with allowing them to get a green card and stay in the country. green card for victims of abuse, green card for other categories. Okay, here's the non-immigrant. So we've got column number 1 we already talked about, that's the immigrant. Now we're the non-immigrant. So we got ESTA, which basically means these are countries that we have treaties with, European countries and other countries. You don't need a visa, you just go there. So I'm sure many of you have traveled before, or if you've gone to Europe or whatever. You don't need a visa, you just get there, and when you get there, you just go something out there, you're there. No big, okay? But you can't stay long, you stay for a couple weeks. Same with them coming over here, same. Visitor visa, that's the B2 that we're talking about, it's very popular. People coming here just for a time and going back. Employment, this is the H1B, this is the H2B, this is the some of those others that you hear about. Business, now this is different. This is the 2 major areas here. This is the E2. This is where you can buy, or an immigrant can purchase a business in this country, and then they can come here and run it. Okay, and as long as that country or the company is viable, they can stay. And they run it every 2 years. You have to renew. Now, it's not a pathway to a green card. Okay, so but it could be like a green card. They're here indefinitely until the business goes up. But I know people here in this town that are just here. They're renewed every 2 years, but they'll never get a green card doing that. Why? Because it's not immigrant. Remember, their intent is to come here temporarily, not permanently. Now, you have a question?
Why would they go ahead and get a green card?
Because they can't, oftentimes. Because they don't have family. Because there's not a business that's going to sponsor them. So it's hard. And yeah, it's a good question.
So at their retirement age, they have to go back where they came from. Is that how that works? Like if a company lasts for 30 years?
Yeah, I don't think they retire. I think they just keep on going.
This is kind of
unfortunately, but yeah, technically they would have to, right? You know, the company's not going anymore. So yeah, our laws are, I mean, they're good, but we need reform, not just for the border, but for all of our, because there are so many people that want to come here the right way, and they'll pay the money. I mean, that's not a big deal. I mean, if they want to do it, but our laws are just so antiquated, and it's like most everything else is politics. It's gone into it, and this is a mess. So business and cultural, that's where you get your J1s. That's where you see people come over like on au pairs, or they'll come over just to learn or whatever. They're here for a couple months or whatever, and they go back. That's what this is. Now again, they're not here. They're here temporarily, not permanently. So you just have to have that in your mind when you're talking to somebody about immigration law. The first thing that you get in your head and you want to ask them is, you coming here temporarily or you coming here permanently? And then you can start breaking it down where they're at. Okay, so let's go. We got about 10 minutes. Let's go into the green card through family. We talked a little bit about this. I have some props. So here is all of immigration law. Okay, on this paper here. You can't see it from there, but this is all in different ways. And again, we need reform, right? Because they make you jump through hoops and do all kinds of stuff that doesn't really make sense oftentimes. But so that's immigration in a nutshell. So the immediate family. All right. So this is how it works. If you're a U.S. citizen, okay, you can sponsor somebody for a green card. Okay, if you're married, as a spouse. So somebody gets married, now all of a sudden they get a green card. See, it's so easy. That's why there's so much fraud in that area. Also, you can sponsor, or let me see, unmarried children under 21, or parents. Okay, so those are the areas of immediate. Now, the reason why this is separated here is because this here is gold. All right, because once you get married, you can sponsor right away and get your green card 6 months to a year. Okay. If you don't have this, then you come out here. Now you're going with the visa bulletin. Okay. What's the visa bulletin? Right here. You go to the website, either the State Department or the Department of State. Here's another government agency that we're dealing with. Okay. So you got the USCIS, all right, under the U.S. Homeland Security. You got the Labor Department that we were talking about. Now we're dealing with the Department of State. Okay? Why? Because now we're going out of country. We have consulates and embassies all over the world. Okay? Those are Americans in those consulates and embassies. okay? That's why when there's issues going on like Sudan, we had to get the Americans out of it, okay? Why? Because they're a threat to us. But we have Americans, and what are Americans doing there? Well, so we can have, civic, and we can build other countries. But the main reason is so we can service the visas. So what happens is, let's say our embassy in Turkey, Istanbul. A Turkish person wants to immigrate to this country, they'll go to the consulate. Well, before they go to the consulate, we do all the paperwork here through the USCIS, okay? Once so they'll do the sponsor, they'll do the I-130, let's just say it's a spouse, okay? They got married in Turkey, the US citizen came back here, the wife, let's just say, is still in Istanbul, Turkey. Now they're trying to get her a green card so she can come out here to the United States, okay? How do we do that? One of the ways is consular processing. You do the paperwork through the USCIS, 6 or 7 months after the approval, if there is an approval, they take the paperwork, they send it to that consulate through the Department of State in Istanbul. They get the paperwork, and then they start their process. And usually that's pretty quick. It could be a month and a half, whatever. And then that person will go to that consulate, the wife will go to the consulate, the American consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, do like a 2 to 3 minute interview, and if she passes, they stamp her passport and she comes to America. That's how that works. The visa bulletin is this. If you don't fit into this category here, in other words, if you're a US citizen and it's not a wife, or it's not a child unmarried under 21, or a parent at least 21 years old, then if you don't have this, then you drop here. So in F1 would be an unmarried son, daughter, 21 age and older. So in other words, let's just say I'm married. Here we have somebody in Germany, right? But they're married. Well, I have unmarried on there. Okay, that shouldn't be unmarried, that should be married. Sorry about that. I'll have to change that. That should be married. But they're married, so they don't work under the under immediate family. They come to the visa bulletin, which means that we have to go through the visa bulletin. In other words, they can't just come out. There's a wait list. So the visa bulletin is all about. There's a certain amount of visas that this government allows for these categories, and generally, there's more people that want to come here than we have visas available. So then they have a wait list called a visa bulletin. You go online, you can see it today. And it tells you what your wait list is. Sometimes it can be 15 years before you even come out. That's what I'm saying. You don't want to be down here. You get down here to the 4th preference, F4, then your brothers and sisters of a U.S. citizen, not a green card holder, but of a U.S. citizen, fine, there's a pathway, but let's look at the pathway. Okay, and I'll do this real quick. So if you go here, you'll see a chart. You got family law and you got employment law. So there's, for the EB visas, that's the immigrant ones, there's also a wait list for them. Sometimes, now if it says C on there, like this whole F2A category, C's, that means current, that means there's no wait list. So that's rare. So here we got, you'll see 4, 5 areas, all chargeability areas except those listed. Basically that means this column is for everybody else except for China, India, Mexico, and Philippines. Okay. So these countries have their own column. The reason is because they're gigantic countries, especially China, right? And so the way our government sets it up, our policy, is that they do it by visa category and by country. So a certain amount of Chinese can come every year, a certain amount of so on and so forth. Therefore, if you look at just the volume of people, you got 1.5 billion Chinese, basically, almost, right? And so, of course, there's going to be so many more applications for visa in that area. So if you're one of these categories, let's just go to an F4 on China. They are taking a Those with priority lists, and that's going to take too long to explain, but just trust me on this. When you submit your application, you get a priority date. They go by that date. So if I put in an application right now, it's going to be April 26th, 2023. Okay. They're processing right now in China, the F4 category, brothers and sisters of a U.S. citizen. Right now, they're processing visas, applications that were sent in with a priority date in March, let me see, March 22nd, 2007.
Wow. Is that why so many people get married?
Yes, yes.
To avoid all that.
Yes.
So that makes sense.
Yes. That's why marriage fraud is John again.
Wow.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this. This is the different categories, EB1. So again, we're still talking about immigrant visas. These are the ones that are going to come here permanently and stay here for the rest of our lives. F1, so this is how they break this down. If you have extraordinary ability, we want you. And again, it's about America first, right? It's what is going to benefit our country. We want this country to survive and move forward, right? So we want the best and brightest. So that's what this is about. If you have an extraordinary ability in science, arts, education, business, athletics, you're going to get a green card, okay? But you really have to have extraordinary. It can't be less than extraordinary. Second is member of a profession. Okay, so the 2 and the 3 is where you have companies that really, really like you. Okay, so the H-1B, that's the temporary. If they like you enough, they're going to bring you here for 3 years and maybe you need for another 3. Here, this is a green card. So these are companies that saying, okay, we'll bring over somebody that is in business, we'll give you a green card, but we really have to like you. And the reason is because it costs a lot to do it. There's a whole process that you do with the labor department to get that certification. So it's a lot of work. So you really have, it's possible, but you really have to like it. And then here it's more of a skill. So even somebody working in the fields, whatever, they can still get a green card if the employer, because see the company has to pay for it.
Was that a negotiation thing between businesses?
I don't know,
Sometimes
probably.
immigrant versus non-immigrant?
Probably.
Based on what your
Well-
skills are, what you bring to the table?
Well, for everything I'm showing you here, there's generally a non-immigrant version of it. So, but yeah, I mean, over the years, it's just, our laws have just, politics and everything else, but yeah, good question. So we're talking about, again, we're still just in the green card area. And we haven't even touched, we haven't gone into detail, the non-immigrant, we don't have time, or the asylum, we don't have time, and there's other stuff too. It's all gigantic, okay? So here, this is another area. So of course, if you go back, you can see it right there, and you have all of the categories. You had, let me see here, green card through family, through employment, through special immigrant. This is special immigrant. So this is a religious worker, so like a preacher or a priest or something like that, they can actually come in and stay here permanently with the green card. Now there's another version that's more popular, the R1, that's the non-immigrant, where you see a lot of missionaries and stuff coming over here, taking temporary. This here, they can actually get a green card. So this is the other version, this is the immigrant, this is the permanent version of the R1. And then you got the special immigrant juvenile, and then you can see the others. Okay, this is going to be our last slide, which is good timing. Here's our areas: green card through family, green card through employment, green card through special immigrant, green card through refugee, and asylum. I'll hit this real quick, we'll be done. There's still more areas: human trafficking, victims of abuse, other categories, registry. This is gigantic. Here's asylum. Okay, this is what you see at the border. Most of it. They come in here, they don't have papers, they come meet me, which is called entry without papers, basically, without inspection. And they take them and they put them, you've seen the news, okay? Oftentimes they'll just release them on the court date. They'll come to the court and it's for removal. Okay, you don't have papers, we're removing you from the country. Now before, we weren't even letting them in, we're stopping them there in Mexico. Now they've been coming back in, so we house them, they go to court, most of them, the asylum claims are fraudulent or frivolous, they don't have a real, so they are sent back. So they'll have a court date, sometimes it can be years. Most of them just disappear into the country. Some of them call attorneys like us, me, and say, yeah, I want to do this right. We have a legitimate claim. I'm from China, I'm from this, I'm from that, I'm from, and there's all kinds of South American countries that there is, Nicaragua, and so on and so forth, but there is legitimate persecution going on. And yes, that should be a situation where they should be allowed to have asylum. So they have 1 year, once they get here, without papers, they have 1 year to claim asylum. If they go beyond the 1 year, you can't claim asylum. There's exceptions to the rule, of course. But, so that's the case. So they're here. If I get involved, if it's asylum, then we're filing papers. It's a defensive asylum scenario, which means that they're not only filing asylum, but they're in removal because they came here illegally. So they're getting kicked out of the country. So it's a dual purpose for me. I'm trying to keep them from getting removed and then keeping them, having the asylum granted because here it is. It's an immigrant visa. You get a green card through asylum. And eventually they can become a citizen. So that's that. But you can see here, and I'll finish right now. It says refugee. Refugee is basically the same rules. A refugee is an asylum seeker outside the country. Once they enter our country, now they're asylee. Same rules, same everything. So refugee outside the country, as soon as they come in the country, magically now they're asylee. But everything else is the same. Asylee is a person that suffered persecution of fear or credible fear that they will be persecuted on the account of race, religion, nationality, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion. These are the only areas. And it has to be that nexus of the government or the government sponsoring somebody to persecute a person based on one of these areas. And most of the time it's political opinion. Okay, so people in Nicaragua disagree with the government puts them in jail, they leave the government or leave the country, come here, they want asylum because if they do go back, they'll get killed, most of them. So that's a legitimate claim.